So I don't usually make videos like this really anymore, but unfortunately the toxic website known as Twitter has kind of forced my hand in this department. I keep seeing so much of this that I literally just can't hold it back anymore. There's so many people trying to say this whole Final Fantasy 16 isn't a real Final Fantasy game anymore, and all these different kinds of reasonings that, oh, it's just actually a spin-off game in disguise, or it's so different, Final Fantasy is not supposed to have action combat, or so many whatever different reasons. Even just the masked loading screens of you squeezing through a corridor, people being mad that that's in the game. It's just so many baffling reasons that people are choosing to attack Final Fantasy 16. But to a lot of these people, I want to ask, what makes a Final Fantasy game real then? It's baffling to me in particular because Final Fantasy is a franchise known for each entry having such a unique identity from one another that it's understandable that any single one of them can be someone's favorite. And still, after 35 years and more going on, it still has people saying things like this. I genuinely don't understand. The literal creator of this series, who doesn't even work at Square anymore, mind you, feels the Final Fantasy blood running through this game's veins. So what exactly are people looking for in these games? I personally have always felt that Final Fantasy was such a unique series because the feeling I get from these games, I don't get from any other game. And it's not to say this franchise is better than, say, another franchise or vice versa. It's just that this is such a unique feeling that I can only get from Final Fantasy, and that's what makes it such an incredible franchise. Final Fantasy 16 seems to be diving deeper into realism, darker themes, changing its execution with its combat, and more. But Final Fantasy is a series that was never specifically defined by any of these things. Across this franchise, so many of these games are so different from one another. So why are people choosing to hate on that specific perspective now of all times, with Final Fantasy 16 in particular? It's takes like these where people unconsciously show off their ignorance, in my opinion. Instead of just dubbing the game as something you're not interested in because it's a Final Fantasy that isn't offering what you go to Final Fantasy for, you decide to attack its identity further, muddying the entire community with all this toxicity. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's a huge reason why I, in particular, stay away from online communities these days. It's because so many people would rather take their opinion and use them as objective facts to attack and belittle other people's perspectives. It's ignorant, plain and simple. I personally just much rather just spend my time giving my opinions on stuff for an audience that is willingly going onto a video to check it out. I'm not going and trying to tell you why this is this or this is that. Final Fantasy 16 is a real Final Fantasy game because it's called Final Fantasy 16. The creators have dubbed it as such. Who am I to say that that's not the case in this particular circumstance? So no, Final Fantasy 16 isn't a spin-off. It's the next mainline Final Fantasy created by some of the greatest minds to ever touch this franchise. So will it be good? I don't know, but I haven't played the game yet. But based on the work this team has produced in the past, I'm confident it'll be a high quality product in the end. I trust, based on the knowledge of what these people have worked on in the past, like Final Fantasy 14, for example. That's literally anybody who's played Final Fantasy 14 and, pay attention to the story and are, caught up and all that stuff. Anyone who has done that can fully vouch for this team's work for this franchise. And again, if we have the creator of the literal franchise who isn't even affiliated with Square anymore vouching for this, what more do we need? The game's got crystals, chocobos, Sid. We have the same monsters that we've got from the previous franchise. We have amazing music done by Soken himself. We have this a deep, seemingly rich story with characters with all their own different motivations and perspectives on the whole scenario going on. And yeah, the combat may be pretty different than what most of this franchise has done in the past, but isn't innovating the combat and changing things up what this franchise is known for? Again, yeah, you may go back to Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3, and while they may be really similar, anybody who's played those three games would be able to tell you how different they actually are. Final Fantasy 1 and 2 don't play anything alike. Just because a game is turn-based doesn't necessarily mean it's good. You know, I'm not gonna just sit up here and act like Final Fantasy II is also in the golden age of Final Fantasy when just because it's during the turn-based era. No, Final Fantasy II's combat, while I can see why some people, you know, would like it, but me personally, there was way too many limitations and oversights in my opinion that cause it to just not be a streamlined experience, which is why I feel that re-releases of the game tend to be a bit better than the original. But at its core, I don't really care for Final Fantasy II's combat, though I do like its characters and its world. That's just one thing for an example. But then you also have Final Fantasy X, which most people tend to think of as the peak of the turn-based combat in Final Fantasy. While for me, for example, while I love Final Fantasy X's combat, I personally think the job system that 10-2 offers is just something that I find more appealing. I find games like Final Fantasy VI, with how it uses its magicite and all these different jobs and unique abilities for each character, I find that to be more intriguing than something simpler yet, you know, I guess grand, like Final Fantasy X. That's just me personally. But the fact that I can have a completely different idea of what makes this great or what makes this bad can be completely different from someone else who has played the exact same games. And again, that's something I only really get from Final Fantasy. You know, there's not many RPG franchises in my opinion that can constantly put out high quality products to where so much of the series is consistently good that any one of them can be someone's favorite. There are other franchises that are also similar to this, like Persona I find has pretty consistently good games, so where if you were to tell me any one of the games were one of your favorites, I'd probably believe you, and I can see why. But while Persona 4 might be my favorite, I can get why someone might prefer Persona 5 or Persona 3. And the same thing with Final Fantasy. My favorite Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy 14, and it is legit the most different out of all the other games in the franchise. But at the same time, my second favorite is like Final Fantasy VI, and Final Fantasy VI is nothing like Final Fantasy 14. But the fact that they exude the same unique feeling I get from this franchise, that is what makes Final Fantasy to me. And again, this isn't a in defense of Final Fantasy 16 video. I've not played the game. I can play the game when it comes out and maybe have a completely different tune. I might go and play it and say, yeah, this is a Final Fantasy game, but you know, it's like, I don't really like a lot of the characters. I don't like the story. I don't like the world, and the combat's kind of frustrating. I could feel that way when the game comes out. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but again, I'm trying to make it be known here that I'm not trying to defend a game I haven't played. You know, I'm not going to properly judge it until I get my hands on it, especially if Square wants to help me out with that. But in my opinion, let's just make sure we're not all just trying to belittle other people's opinions by exuding dominance with our own. Just really be considerate of other people's feelings. You know, we all love Final Fantasy. There's a reason we're all here. There's a reason you clicked on this video. It's the same reason why people make artwork and make their own music and renditions and all this stuff. Why they get involved in these communities, because they want to be around other people who love what they love in a similar way, you know? And that's the beauty of communities. But when you have people acting like this and being toxic, it makes, one, nobody feel welcome, and two, it makes people not really want to say what they have to say, because it just, what's the point when people are just gonna crap over everything you want to say anyway? But that's just me. An opinion cannot be wrong after all. But hopefully the game will come out and will be sung praises by everybody who plays it. I'm super excited to play it, and I hope you watching this far into the video means that you are too. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I love Final Fantasy. I love games like Trails, and I have so many more videos coming. I'm sorry I've been a little bit absent the last couple weeks. I am just getting over COVID, so the next video, actually the Trails third video, won't actually have my face in it because I had COVID when I was recording that, and y'all don't need to see me. But that's gonna be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, like the video if you haven't already. My name is KingdomAce. Remember, everyone, to play some games, have some fun, and enjoy your day today.